The knife slipped through the onion like it was cutting through my own heart, each slice releasing that sharp, clean scent that always made my eyes water. Or maybe that was just me finally letting myself cry. The blade trembled in my grip as I heard Dad's voice echoing from the dining room, that booming laugh he reserved for important guests, the one that used to make me feel proud to be a Max. Now it just sounded hollow. "Linda, table 6 needs their appetizers." Mom's voice cut through the kitchen noise, sharp as the cleaver hanging above my station. She didn't even look at me when she said it, just kept plating the salmon special with those precise movements she'd taught me when I was 12 years old, standing on a milk crate to reach the prep counter. I set down my knife and wiped my hands on the apron that had been my second skin for a decade. The fabric was stained with 10 years of late nights, early mornings, and every dream I'd poured into this place. Max's family kitchen wasn't just a restaurant to me. It was my life's work, my identity, my future. At least, I thought it was. The dining room buzzed with a familiar symphony of clinking glasses and satisfied murmurs. I'd orchestrated this dance 1,000 times, knew every table's rhythm, every customer's preference. Mrs. Chun at table 3 always ordered the seafood pasta, but asked for extra lemon. The businessman at the corner booth came in every Tuesday for our braised short ribs and always left exactly a 20% tip. This was my world, and I knew every inch of it. But tonight felt different. Tonight, there was a weight in the air that made my chest tight, like the moment before a thunderstorm when you can taste the electricity on your tongue. I pushed through the swinging doors into the dining room, balancing the appetizer plates with the ease of someone who'd been doing this since she could walk. The familiar warmth of the space wrapped around me, exposed brick walls lined with family photos, the soft glow of Edison bulbs casting everything in golden light, the scent of garlic and herbs that had seeped into the very foundation of the building. Table 6 was a young couple on what looked like a first date. The woman kept tucking her hair behind her ear, and the man was trying too hard to be funny. I remembered being that nervous once, that hopeful. I set down their plates with a smile that felt more genuine than anything else I'd managed today. "The bruschetta and the calamari," I said, arranging the dishes just so. "Can I get you anything else?" They shook their heads, already diving into conversation about some movie they'd both seen. I envied them their simplicity, their ability to exist in this moment without the weight of legacy pressing down on their shoulders. As I turned to head back to the kitchen, I caught sight of Dad at the bar, his silver hair catching the light as he leaned in close to speak with someone I couldn't quite see. His expression was serious, the kind of focused intensity he usually reserved for supplier negotiations or health inspectors. My stomach clenched with a familiar anxiety. "Linda." I turned to find my brother Marcus standing behind me, his crisp white shirt somehow still pristine despite having been in the kitchen all evening. At 28, he was 2 years younger than me, but he carried himself with the confidence of someone who'd never doubted his place in the world. His dark eyes, the same ones we'd both inherited from Dad, held something I couldn't quite read. "We need to talk," he said, his voice low enough that the nearby tables couldn't hear. "After service." The way he said it made my skin prickle. Not "Dad wants to see us" or "family meeting." Just "we need to talk." Like he was already speaking from a position of authority I didn't remember giving him. "About what?" I asked, but he was already walking away, his shoulders set in that determined line that meant arguing would be pointless. I stood there for a moment, watching him disappear into the kitchen, that familiar feeling of being left behind washing over me like cold water. It was the same feeling I'd had as a kid when he'd get picked for the school play, or win the science fair while I was stuck helping Mom with inventory. The same feeling I'd had when he went to culinary school in New York while I stayed home to keep the restaurant running during Dad's heart attack. The same feeling I'd been trying to ignore for months as he'd slowly inserted himself into more and more of the restaurant's operations, despite the fact that I'd been the one holding this place together for the past decade. I shook my head and forced myself to focus. Service wasn't over, and whatever this was about could wait. I had a job to do, responsibilities that went beyond family drama. The restaurant needed me, even if my family was starting to act like it didn't. The next 2 hours passed in a blur of orders and refills, the the familiar rhythm of service carrying me through my growing unease. I moved through the dining room like a dancer who'd memorized every step, anticipating needs before they were voiced, solving problems before they became complaints. This was what I was good at. This was what I'd built my life around. But even as I smiled and chatted with customers, part of my mind kept drifting back to Marcus's words, to the serious expression on Dad's face, to the way Mom had avoided my eyes all evening. Something was coming, something that was going to change everything, and I could feel it approaching like a storm on the horizon. The last customer left at 10:30, an elderly man who always stayed late nursing a single glass of wine and reading the newspaper. I watched him shuffle out into the night, his cane tapping against the sidewalk, and felt a sudden urge to follow him, to walk out into the darkness and keep walking until I found somewhere that felt like home. Instead, I turned back to face the empty dining room, the chairs stacked on tables like sleeping sentinels, the soft hum of the dishwasher in the kitchen the only sound breaking the silence. This was usually my favorite time of night, when the chaos settled and I could see the results of our work: clean tables, satisfied customers, another successful service. Tonight, it just felt like the calm before the storm. "Linda." Dad's voice came from behind me, and I turned to see him standing in the doorway to his office, his face grave in the dim light. "Come on back. We need to have a family meeting." The words hit me like a physical blow, even though I'd been expecting them. Family meetings at Max's kitchen only happened when something big was changing, and in my experience, big changes were rarely good news for me. I followed him down the narrow hallway lined with framed reviews and photos from the restaurant's early days. There was the picture from our grand opening 15 years ago, Mom and Dad beaming as they cut the ribbon while 5-year-old me and 3-year-old Marcus peeked out from behind their legs. There was the photo from when we'd won Best Family Restaurant from the local paper 3 years running. There was the shot of me at 18, proudly holding my first paycheck as an official employee. Looking at those photos now, I realized they told the story of my entire adult life. While other kids my age had been going to college, dating, figuring out who they wanted to be, I'd been here, pouring everything I had into making this place succeed. I'd sacrificed relationships, opportunities, pieces of myself that I'd never get back, all for the promise that someday this would all be mine. Dad's office was small and cluttered, dominated by a desk that had seen better decades and filing cabinets that groaned under the weight of 15 years of paperwork. Mom was already there, perched on the edge of the worn leather couch, her hands folded in her lap in that way that meant she was nervous. Marcus stood by the window, his back to us, staring out at the empty parking lot. The silence stretched between us like a taut wire, and I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears. Whatever this was about, it was big enough to make my usually talkative family speechless. "Sit down, sweetheart," Dad said, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. The same chair where I'd sat for countless performance reviews, budget meetings, and planning sessions. The chair where I'd presented my ideas for expanding our catering business, for updating the menu, for the marketing campaign that had brought in 30% more customers last year. I sat, my hands gripping the armrests so tightly my knuckles went white. The leather was cracked and familiar under my palms, worn smooth by years of family meetings and difficult conversations. Dad cleared his throat and picked up a folder from his desk. His hand shook slightly as he opened it, and I noticed for the first time how much older he looked than he had just a few months ago. The heart attack 2 years back had aged him, but this was different. This was the weight of a decision he didn't want to make. "Linda, you know how much this place means to all of us," he began, his voice careful and measured. "You've been the backbone of this operation for 10 years, and your mother, and I couldn't be prouder of the woman you've become." The past tense hit me like a slap. Couldn't be prouder. Not our proud, but couldn't be prouder. Like my contributions were already a thing of the past. "But," he continued, and that single word seemed to suck all the air out of the room, "we've been thinking about the future of the restaurant, about what's best for the business and for the family." Marcus finally turned from the window, and I saw something in his expression that made my stomach drop. Not guilt, not apology, but a kind of resigned determination. Like he'd already accepted something I hadn't even heard yet. We've decided to make some changes to the management structure, Dad said, his words coming faster now, like he wanted to get them out before he lost his nerve. Marcus is going to be taking over as CEO, effective immediately. The words hit me like a physical blow, stealing my breath and making the room spin around me.
CEO.
Not manager, not assistant manager, but CEO of the restaurant I'd been running for the past decade. The restaurant I'd saved during Dad's heart attack. The restaurant I'd modernized and expanded and loved like it was my own child.
What?
The word came out as barely a whisper, and I had to clear my throat and try again. What did you say? Marcus has been working really hard to learn the business side of things, Mom said, her voice gentle but firm. He's got fresh ideas and with his culinary training. Fresh ideas? I stood up so fast the chair rolled backward and hit the wall. I've been running this place for 10 years. I know every supplier, every customer, every inch of this building. I've increased profits by 40% since I took over operations. I closed the Hartwell Industries deal that's going to bring in $600,000 over the next 2 years. And you're giving it to Marcus because he has fresh ideas? The silence that followed was deafening. I could hear the hum of the refrigerators in the kitchen, the tick of the old clock on Dad's desk, the sound of my own ragged breathing. Linda, Marcus said, and his voice was maddeningly calm, this isn't about your contributions. You've done amazing work here. But the restaurant needs someone with formal business training, someone who can take it to the next level. Formal business training? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. You mean the MBA you got while I was here, actually running the business? The degree you earned while I was working 16-hour days to keep this place afloat during Dad's recovery. That's enough, Dad said, his voice sharp with authority. This decision has been made. Marcus will be CEO, and you'll continue as head of operations, reporting to him. Reporting to him. My little brother, who'd been working here for less than 2 years, who still had to ask me where we kept the extra napkins, who'd never had to make payroll when we were $3,000 short or negotiate with a supplier who was threatening to cut us off. I looked around the room at the 3 people who were supposed to love me most in the world, and I saw nothing but closed faces and made-up minds. This wasn't a discussion or a family meeting. This was an execution, and I was the one being put to death. I see, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. And when exactly were you planning to tell me about this decision? Before or after you'd already made the announcement to the staff? The guilty look that passed between my parents told me everything I needed to know. We wanted to tell you first, Mom said weakly. But you've already told Marcus, I pointed out. You've already made the decision. You've already planned out my future without bothering to ask what I wanted. I turned to look at Marcus, really look at him, and saw a stranger wearing my brother's face. When had he become someone who could stand there and watch our parents hand him everything I'd worked for? When had he become someone who could accept a position he hadn't earned at the expense of the sister who'd sacrificed everything for this family? I need some air, I said, heading for the door. Linda, wait, Dad called after me. We need to discuss the transition plan. I stopped with my hand on the doorknob and turned back to face them. The transition plan? You mean the plan where I train my replacement and then smile while he takes credit for everything I've built? That's not, Marcus started, but I cut him off. Save it, I said. I've heard enough. I walked out of the office and through the empty restaurant, my footsteps echoing in the silence. The dining room looked different now, like I was seeing it through someone else's eyes. The photos on the walls, the carefully arranged tables, the bar I designed myself, none of it felt like mine anymore. I pushed through the kitchen doors and went straight to my station, where my knife roll sat exactly where I'd left it. My hands moved automatically, untying my apron and folding it neatly on the counter. The fabric felt heavier than it should have, weighted down with 10 years of dreams that had just been declared worthless. I picked up my knife roll, the leather worn soft from years of use, and held it against my chest like armor. These knives were mine, the only things in this place that truly belonged to me. I'd bought them with my first paycheck, had them sharpened and resharpened until they were extensions of my own hands. The kitchen door swung open behind me, and I heard Marcus's voice. Linda, please. Let's talk about this. I didn't turn around. I couldn't bear to look at him, to see the face that had once meant safety and partnership now representing everything I'd lost. There's nothing to talk about, I said, slinging the knife roll over my shoulder. You got what you wanted. This isn't what I wanted, he said, and for the first time, his voice cracked slightly. I never wanted it to happen like this. But you took it anyway, I said, finally turning to face him. You could have said no. You could have told them I deserved better. But you took it anyway. He opened his mouth to respond, but I was already walking away, heading for the back door that led to the alley behind the restaurant. My hand was on the handle when I heard him call my name one more time. Linda, where are you going? I paused, my hand still on the door, and felt something shift inside me. A decade of putting everyone else's needs before my own, of swallowing my pride and my dreams for the good of the family, of believing that loyalty and hard work would eventually be rewarded. All of that was over now. I'm going to find out what I'm worth to someone who actually values me, I said without looking back. I pushed open the door and stepped out into the night, leaving behind the only life I'd ever known. The alley smelled like rain and garbage and possibility, and for the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. But as I walked toward my car, my phone buzzed with a text message that made my blood run cold. It was from James Hartwell, the CEO of Hartwell Industries, the man whose $600,000 catering contract I'd spent 3 months negotiating. Linda, tried calling the restaurant but got voicemail. Need to discuss some concerns about our contract. Can you call me first thing Monday? There might be a problem. I stared at the message, my hands shaking as the implications hit me. The Hartwell deal wasn't just a contract. It was the foundation of our expansion plans, the security that would carry the restaurant through the next 2 years. And James Hartwell didn't deal with problems through text messages unless those problems were serious enough to threaten the entire agreement. What had Marcus done? The rain started as I sat in my car outside the restaurant, fat drops splattering against the windshield like tears I refused to shed. My phone buzzed again. Another message from James Hartwell, this one marked urgent. I didn't open it. Whatever crisis was brewing could wait until I figured out how to breathe again. The knife roll sat heavy in my lap, its familiar weight both comforting and devastating. These knives had carved out my identity, slice by slice, for 10 years. Now they felt like all I had left of myself. I drove home through empty streets, the city blurred by rain, and the tears I finally let fall. My apartment was a studio above Mrs. Patterson's bakery, small and cramped, but mine in a way the restaurant had never truly been. The walls were covered with culinary magazines, recipe cards, and photos from food festivals I'd attended on my rare days off. It was the space where I'd dreamed of opening my own place someday, where I'd sketched menu ideas and calculated budgets for a future that had just been ripped away. I dropped the knife roll on my tiny kitchen counter and stared at it. 10 years of my life reduced to a leather case full of steel. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd spent so long cutting and chopping and preparing for others that I'd forgotten how to nourish myself. My phone rang. Dad's name flashed on the screen, and I let it go to voicemail. Then Mom called. Then Marcus. I turned the phone face down and opened a bottle of wine I'd been saving for a celebration that would never come. The wine tasted like disappointment and wasted years. I must have fallen asleep on the couch because I woke to sunlight streaming through my windows and the smell of fresh bread from the bakery below. For a moment, I forgot what had happened. Then reality crashed back like a hangover, leaving me hollow and aching. My phone showed 17 missed calls and twice as many text messages. Most were from my family, but 3 were from James Hartwell, each one more urgent than the last. The final message, sent at 6 a.m., made my stomach clench. Linda, this is critical. The health department showed up at our corporate office yesterday asking questions about Max's kitchen. Something about violations and permit issues. I need to speak with you immediately. Our board is concerned about moving forward with the contract. I sat up so fast the room spun. Health department violations? We'd passed our last inspection with flying colors. I'd personally overseen every aspect of our food safety protocols, had spent weeks preparing for that inspection because I knew how important it was for the Hartwell deal. Unless something had changed since I left. I called James back, my hands shaking as I dialed. He answered on the first ring. "Linda, thank God. I've been trying to reach you for hours." "James, I'm so sorry. There was a family emergency." "What's this about the health department?" "That's what I need to know." "Yesterday afternoon, 2 inspectors showed up here with a file full of complaints about Max's kitchen. Allegations of improper food storage, pest control issues, staff not following safety protocols. They said they'd received multiple anonymous tips." My blood turned to ice. "That's impossible. We just passed our inspection 3 weeks ago. I have the certificate." "I know, and that's what makes this so strange." The inspectors seemed surprised too, said the complaints were very specific and recent. "Linda, I have to ask, is there something going on at the restaurant that I should know about?" I closed my eyes, trying to process what he was telling me. Anonymous tips, recent complaints, specific allegations about violations that didn't exist when I was running the kitchen. "James, I need to be honest with you about something. As of last night, I'm no longer with Max's Kitchen. There was a change in management, and I resigned." The silence on the other end of the line stretched so long, I thought the call had dropped. "You resigned?" His voice was carefully controlled, but I could hear the concern underneath. "Linda, you are my primary contact for this contract. You're the one who assured me about the restaurant's standards and capabilities." "I know, and I stand by every assurance I gave you. But I can't speak for what's happening there now." "This is a problem," he said bluntly. "A big problem. Our contract specifically named you as the point of contact for all catering operations. If you're no longer there—" He didn't need to finish the sentence. I knew exactly what he was saying. The Hartwell contract wasn't just about the restaurant's reputation. It was about my reputation, my personal guarantee that Max's Kitchen could deliver on their promises. "I understand," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "What do you need from me?" "I need to know what's really going on over there. And I need to know fast. Our board meeting is Monday morning, and they're already spooked by the health department visit. If I can't give them concrete assurances about the restaurant's stability and your replacement's qualifications, you'll pull the contract." "I'll have to." After I hung up, I sat staring at my phone for a long time. $600,000. 2 years of guaranteed income. The foundation of everything my family had planned for the restaurant's future. All of it hanging by a thread because of health department complaints that made no sense and a management change that James Hartwell had never been told about. I thought about calling my parents, warning them about what was coming. Then I remembered the look on Marcus's face when he'd accepted the CEO position, the way he'd stood there and watched them strip away everything I'd worked for. "Ask your CEO." The words echoed in my mind, and for the first time since last night, I felt something other than devastation. I felt a cold, sharp satisfaction that cut through my grief like one of my perfectly honed knives. I spent the weekend in a strange limbo, ignoring calls from my family while obsessively checking local restaurant industry forums and social media. By Sunday evening, I'd found what I was looking for, a small item in the business section of the local paper about health department investigations into several downtown restaurants. Max's Kitchen was mentioned by name. The article was brief, just a few paragraphs about routine follow-up inspections based on community concerns. But in the restaurant industry, even a mention like this was poison. Customers would see it and choose somewhere else. Suppliers would start asking questions. Other potential clients would look elsewhere. I knew because I'd seen it happen to competitors over the years. The restaurant business was built on trust and reputation, and both could be destroyed by whispers and rumors faster than they could be rebuilt by years of good service. My phone rang again. This time it was Sarah Chun, my former sous chef and the closest thing I had to a best friend. "Linda, what the hell is going on?" "Marcus called an all-staff meeting this morning and announced he's the new CEO, but he wouldn't say where you were. Then the health department showed up again, and now there are rumors flying that we might lose the Hartwell contract." I could hear the panic in her voice, and my heart ached for her. Sarah had been with us for 3 years, had worked her way up from prep cook to sous chef through pure determination and skill. She had a 2-year-old daughter and a mortgage, and she depended on the restaurant for everything. Sarah, I can't really talk about it right now, but I need you to promise me something. Start looking for other opportunities. Just in case. Linda, you're scaring me. What happened? Why aren't you here? I wanted to tell her everything, to explain how my own family had betrayed me, how Marcus had accepted a position he hadn't earned while I was cast aside like yesterday's prep. But Sarah didn't need my drama. She needed practical advice. Just trust me on this, okay? Update your resume. Reach out to your contacts. And whatever you do, don't let them blame you for anything that goes wrong. After I hung up, I realized I was crying again. Not for myself this time, but for Sarah and the rest of the staff who were about to pay the price for my family's poor decisions. They trusted me to look out for them, and now I couldn't even protect them from the fallout of my own departure. Monday morning came too soon. I woke before dawn. My body still programmed for restaurant hours, even though I had nowhere to go. I made coffee and sat by my window, watching the city wake up below me. Somewhere across town, Marcus was probably arriving at the restaurant for his first day as CEO, walking into the kitchen I'd organized, sitting at the desk where I'd planned menus and managed schedules and built something I'd thought would last forever. At exactly 9 a.m., my phone rang. Dad's name on the screen. I let it ring 4 times before answering. Linda, sweetheart, we need to talk. His voice was strained, older than I'd ever heard it. There's been a problem with the Hartwell contract. What kind of problem? I asked, though I already knew. James Hartwell called this morning. He's pulling out. Says there are too many uncertainties with the management change and some health department issues. Linda, this is a disaster. That contract was supposed to carry us through the next 2 years. I closed my eyes and felt that cold satisfaction again, sharper this time. That's terrible, Dad. What did Marcus say when you told him? He's trying to figure out what went wrong. The health department came back again on Friday, and apparently there were some issues with documentation and protocols. Things that should have been straightforward. Things that would have been straightforward if I'd been there to handle them. Things that Marcus, for all his formal business training, didn't know how to manage because he'd never actually run a restaurant kitchen. I'm sure he'll figure it out, I said, my voice carefully neutral. He is the CEO now. Linda, please. We need your help. You know the Hartwell account better than anyone. Maybe if you talk to James, explain that this was just a temporary transition issue. Dad, I don't work there anymore. Remember? You made that very clear on Friday night. But you're still family. This restaurant is still your legacy, too. Legacy. The word hit me like a slap. My legacy? Dad, you gave my legacy to Marcus. You took 10 years of my life and handed it to someone else because he had the right degree and the right gender. That's not. It is exactly that, I said, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. You never even considered making me CEO, did you? It never occurred to you that the person who'd been running the restaurant might be qualified to actually run the restaurant. The silence on the other end told me everything I needed to know. Linda, he said finally, what do you want us to do? It was the first time in my life that my father had asked me what I wanted instead of telling me what I should do. The irony would have been funny if it hadn't been so devastating. I want you to ask your CEO, I said. Marcus wanted the job, and you gave it to him. Let him figure out how to save the contract he lost. He didn't lose it. The health department wouldn't have been a problem if you'd left someone competent in charge of the kitchen. But you didn't trust me to handle the business side, so now you get to see how well Marcus handles the operational side. I hung up before he could respond, my hands shaking with adrenaline and something that felt dangerously close to vindication. Within an hour, Marcus called. Linda, we need to talk. This whole situation with Hartwell is getting out of hand, and I think there's been a misunderstanding. What kind of misunderstanding? The health department issues. They're saying there were problems with our food safety protocols, but I can't find any documentation of changes to our procedures. It's like someone reported violations that don't actually exist. I almost laughed. Marcus, did you check the staff training logs? The temperature monitoring sheets? The supplier certification files? Where are those kept? In the filing cabinet next to the walk-in cooler. The same place they've been kept for the past 5 years. The same place I showed you 3 times during your orientation. Another silence. Then, Linda, I need your help. I know things ended badly on Friday, but this is bigger than our family drama. If we lose the Hartwell contract, we might have to lay off half the staff. Then you better figure out how to save it. I don't know how. I've been trying to reach James Hartwell all morning, but he won't take my calls. He keeps asking to speak with you. That's because he doesn't know you. He doesn't trust you. The contract was built on relationships I spent months developing, and you can't just step into that overnight. So help me, he said, and for the first time, I heard desperation in his voice.
Please.
I know I don't deserve it, but the staff doesn't deserve to suffer because of our family's mistakes.
He was right about that.
Sarah and the others hadn't asked to be caught in the middle of this mess. They were good people who'd worked hard and deserved better than to lose their jobs because of my family's poor judgment. But they also deserved to know the truth about what kind of leadership they were working under. Marcus, I said slowly, I'll make you a deal. I'll help you save the Hartwell contract on one condition. Anything. You tell the staff exactly what happened on Friday night. You tell them that Mom and Dad made you CEO over me, and you tell them why. No spin, no corporate speak. Just the truth. Linda, that's not. Those are my terms. Take them or leave them. I could hear him breathing on the other end of the line, could almost see him weighing his options. His pride against the restaurant's survival. His reputation against $600,000. Okay, he said finally. I'll do it.
Good.
Staff meeting at 2 p.m. I'll be there. After I hung up, I sat back and tried to figure out what I was feeling. It wasn't satisfaction anymore. It was something colder, more calculating. For 10 years, I'd been the good daughter, the loyal employee, the team player who put everyone else's needs before her own. That version of Linda Max was gone. The woman who was going to walk into that staff meeting was someone new, someone who understood that loyalty was a two-way street and that sometimes the only way to get respect was to demand it. I opened my laptop and started typing an email to James Hartwell. If I was going to save the Hartwell contract, I was going to do it on my terms. And if my family wanted my help, they were going to learn exactly what it cost to throw away 10 years of dedication. The rain had stopped, and sunlight was streaming through my windows. For the first time since Friday night, I felt like I could see clearly. It was time to find out what Linda Max was really worth. But as I finished the email and prepared to send it, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Saw the news about Max's Kitchen. Interested in discussing opportunities.
Call me.
David Chen, Executive Chef, Meridian Hotel Group. I stared at the message, my finger hovering over the send button for the email to James Hartwell. David Chen was a legend in the local restaurant scene, and Meridian Hotel Group was one of the biggest hospitality companies in the region. They didn't reach out to people unless they were serious about making an offer. Suddenly, saving my family's restaurant didn't seem like the only option on the table. What if I didn't have to go back at all? I stared at David Chen's text message for a full minute before setting my phone aside. The Meridian Hotel Group. I'd heard whispers about their expansion plans, rumors of a new flagship restaurant that would redefine fine dining in the city. The kind of opportunity that came along once in a career if you were lucky. But first, I had a promise to keep. I arrived at Max's Kitchen at 1:45 p.m., 15 minutes before the staff meeting. The parking lot felt foreign under my feet, like I was visiting a place from my childhood rather than the restaurant I'd left just 3 days ago. Through the windows, I could see the lunch rush winding down, servers clearing tables with the efficient choreography I'd helped perfect over the years. The back door was unlocked, and I slipped into the kitchen without announcing myself. The familiar sounds and smells hit me like a physical force. The sizzle of onions in hot oil, the rhythmic chop of knives on cutting boards, the controlled chaos that I'd orchestrated for a decade. For a moment, my resolve wavered. This was my world, my creation. How could I walk away from it? Then I saw Marcus standing at my old station, fumbling with the inventory clipboard I'd designed, his expensive shirt already stained with sauce. He looked lost, overwhelmed, like a child playing dress-up in his father's clothes. "Linda." Sarah spotted me first, her face lighting up with relief before clouding with confusion. "What are you doing here? Marcus said you were taking some time off." "Is that what he said?" I kept my voice neutral, but I caught the quick glance Sarah exchanged with Tommy, our headline cook. They knew something was wrong. These people had worked with me long enough to read the subtext in every pause, every careful word choice. "Staff meeting in 5 minutes," Marcus called out, his voice trying for authority but landing somewhere closer to desperation. "Everyone to the dining room." I watched as the kitchen staff filed out, their movements subdued, uncertain. These were people who'd trusted me to lead them, who'd followed my vision and my standards because they believed I had their best interests at heart. Now they were being asked to follow someone who couldn't even find the inventory sheets. The dining room felt different with the lights up and the chairs arranged in a circle. Less magical, more exposed. The staff settled into their seats with the wary attention of people who'd been through too many restructuring meetings at previous jobs. I took a seat in the back, close enough to observe, but far enough away to make it clear I wasn't running this show. Marcus stood at the front of the room, his hands clasped behind his back in a pose I recognized from Dad's management style. But where Dad commanded natural authority, Marcus looked like he was trying on a costume that didn't quite fit. "Thank you all for coming," he began, his voice echoing slightly in the empty space. "I know there have been some questions about recent changes, and I wanted to address those directly." He paused, his eyes finding mine across the room. I gave him a slight nod.
Keep your promise.
As of Friday night, I've been named CEO of Max's Kitchen. This represents a significant change in our management structure, and I want to be transparent about what that means for all of you. Sarah raised her hand. "What about Linda? Is she still head of operations?" Marcus's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Linda has decided to step back from her role here. She'll be pursuing other opportunities." "That's not exactly accurate," I said, my voice cutting through the diplomatic language like one of my knives through butter. Every head in the room turned toward me. "Would you like to tell them what really happened, Marcus, or should I?" The silence stretched between us like a challenge. I could see him calculating, weighing his options. Tell the truth and admit that he'd accepted a position that should have been mine, or maintain the fiction and risk me exposing it anyway. "Linda," he said carefully, "I don't think this is the time or place. Actually, I think it's exactly the time and place." I stood up, feeling the weight of every gaze in the room. These people deserve to know who they're working for and how he got the job. I walked to the front of the room, my footsteps loud in the silence. Marcus stepped aside, but I could feel the tension radiating from him like heat from a grill. "On Friday night," I said, addressing the staff directly, "my parents called a family meeting. They announced that Marcus would be taking over as CEO of the restaurant I've been running for 10 years. They made this decision without consulting me, without considering my qualifications or my contributions to this place. They gave him my job because he has an MBA and I don't." The shock on their faces was immediate and visceral. Sarah's mouth fell open. Tommy shook his head like he couldn't process what he was hearing. Maria, our longest-serving server, actually gasped. "That's not," Marcus started, but I held up a hand. "I'm not finished." When they offered me the chance to stay on as head of operations, reporting to Marcus, I declined. I walked out. And now, 3 days later, we're facing the loss of the Hartwell contract, $600,000 over 2 years, because the new CEO doesn't know how to manage the relationships and systems that I spent months building. The room erupted in whispers and shocked murmurs. I could see the staff processing this information, connecting dots they hadn't even known existed. The health department visits, the sudden management change, the rumors about lost contracts. It all made sense now. "Linda, please," Marcus said, his voice strained. "This isn't helping anyone. Isn't it?" I turned to face him directly. "These people have a right to know what kind of leadership they're working under. They have a right to know that their job security depends on someone who's been here less than 2 years learning how to do a job that took me a decade to master." I'm trying my best, he said, and for the first time, I heard genuine emotion in his voice. Not anger or defensiveness, but something that sounded almost like fear. I know you are, I said, and I meant it. But your best isn't enough, Marcus. Not for this. Not yet. Sarah stood up, her face flushed with anger. So, what happens to us? Do we just wait around while you two figure out your family drama? It was a fair question, and it cut straight to the heart of why I was here. These people didn't deserve to suffer because of my family's poor decisions. They'd worked hard, followed my lead, trusted me to protect their interests. I owed them more than just the truth. I owed them a solution. That's up to you, I said. But I want you to know that you have options. All of you. Your skills, your experience, your dedication. Those things have value beyond this restaurant. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. I pulled out my phone and showed them David Chen's text message. I got this morning. The Meridian Hotel Group is looking for experienced restaurant professionals. They're not the only ones. The industry knows what we've built here, and they know who built it. The implications hung in the air like smoke. I wasn't just offering them information. I was offering them an escape route. A way out of the uncertainty and instability that my departure had created. Marcus's face went pale. You're trying to poach our staff? I'm giving them the same thing I wish someone had given me, a choice. The choice to work for people who value their contributions and respect their expertise. Linda. Dad's voice came from the doorway, and I turned to see both my parents standing there, their faces grave. How long had they been listening? We need to talk.
Now.
I think we've said everything we need to say, I replied, but Mom stepped forward, her eyes bright with unshed tears. Please, sweetheart. Give us 5 minutes. Just 5 minutes. I looked around the room at the faces of people who'd become more than employees over the years. They'd become my team, my chosen family, in many ways. They deserved better than to be caught in the crossfire of our dysfunction. Take 15 minutes to think about what you've heard, I told them. Talk among yourselves. Ask Marcus any questions you have about his plans for the restaurant. I'll be back. I followed my parents to Dad's office, the same room where my world had been turned upside down 3 days ago. But this time, I wasn't the same person who'd sat in that cracked leather chair and accepted their decision with hurt silence. This time, I was someone who understood her own worth. Linda, what you just did out there, Dad began, but I cut him off. What I just did was tell the truth. Something you should have done on Friday night. We were trying to protect you, Mom said, her voice breaking slightly. We thought if we handled it quietly, it would be easier for everyone. Easier for who? For Marcus, who gets to pretend he earned a position he was handed. For you, who don't have to face the fact that you chose your son over your daughter. Or for me, who was supposed to smile and accept being demoted in my own restaurant. It's not about choosing, Dad started. It's exactly about choosing, I said. You had 2 children who both worked in this restaurant. One of them had been running it successfully for 10 years. The other had been here for less than 2. You chose to promote the one with the MBA and the Y chromosome. Don't insult my intelligence by pretending it was about anything else. The silence that followed was heavy with years of unspoken assumptions and unconscious biases. I could see them both struggling with the truth of what I'd said, the uncomfortable recognition that their decision hadn't been as merit-based as they'd convinced themselves. What do you want from us? Dad asked finally. I want you to fix this. I want you to call James Hartwell and tell him that there's been a management error, that I'm back in charge of operations, and that the restaurant is stable. I want you to handle the health department issues properly. And I want you to give me what I should have had years ago, a real stake in this business. Linda, I'm not finished. I want a partnership agreement that gives me equity in the restaurant proportional to my contributions. I want my name on the business license. I want decision-making authority over operations, staffing, and vendor relationships. And I want a public acknowledgement that I've been the driving force behind this restaurant's success. Dad's face went through several expressions: surprise, consideration, and finally, something that looked like respect. And if we agree to all of that, then I'll save the Hartwell contract. I'll stabilize the staff situation. I'll clean up the mess that's been made in the 3 days since I left. And Marcus. I looked at my brother, who'd been silent throughout this exchange. He looked younger than his 28 years, overwhelmed by the weight of responsibilities he'd thought he wanted. Marcus can stay on as assistant manager. He can learn the business properly from the ground up, the way I did. Maybe in a few years, when he actually understands how to run a restaurant, we can revisit his role. That's not, Marcus started, but Dad held up a hand. It's fair, Dad said quietly. More than fair, considering what we've put you through. I need an answer now, I said. The staff is waiting, and James Hartwell is expecting a call. Every minute we waste makes this harder to fix. Dad looked at Mom, then at Marcus, then back at me. I could see him weighing the options, his pride against the restaurant's survival, his assumptions about leadership against the reality of who had actually been leading. Okay, he said finally. We'll do it your way. All of it? The partnership agreement, the equity, the public acknowledgement. All of it. I felt something shift inside me, a tension I'd been carrying for years finally releasing. This wasn't just about getting my job back. It was about getting the recognition and respect I'd earned, but never received.
Good.
Marcus, call the staff back in. It's time for you to make another announcement. 20 minutes later, I stood in front of the assembled staff again, but this time the dynamic was completely different. Marcus had just finished explaining the new arrangement, that I would be returning as managing partner, that he would be stepping back to learn the business properly, that the restaurant's operations would continue under my leadership. The relief on their faces was palpable. Sarah was actually smiling for the first time since I'd arrived. Tommy gave me a subtle thumbs up. Even the newer staff members, who didn't know me as well, seemed to sense that stability had been restored. I know this has been a confusing few days, I said. But I want you to know that your jobs are secure, your contributions are valued, and this restaurant will continue to operate at the highest standards. We have work to do to rebuild some relationships and address some issues, but we'll do it together. What about the Hartwell contract? Sarah asked. I'll be calling James Hartwell this afternoon. The contract will be honored. As the staff dispersed back to their duties, I felt the familiar rhythm of the restaurant settling around me like a comfortable coat. This was where I belonged, what I was meant to do. But now I was doing it on my own terms, with the recognition and authority I'd always deserved. My phone buzzed with another text from David Chin. Offer stands if you change your mind. Would love to discuss over dinner. I looked at the message for a long moment, then deleted it. The Meridian Hotel Group would have been an incredible opportunity, a chance to start fresh and build something entirely my own. But this restaurant, for all its complications and family drama, was my life's work. I'd poured too much of myself into it to walk away now. Besides, I had a feeling that the Linda Max who emerged from this experience would be capable of building something even more impressive than what David Chin was offering. I'd learned the value of my own worth, the power of standing up for myself, the importance of demanding respect rather than hoping for it. The Hartwell contract was just the beginning. With equity in the business and real decision-making authority, I could finally implement all the ideas I'd been developing for years. The expansion plans, the catering division, the cookbook I'd been dreaming about, all of it was possible now. I walked back into the kitchen, where the dinner prep was already underway. Sarah looked up from her station and grinned. Good to have you back, boss. Good to be back, I said, and for the first time in days, I meant it completely. I picked up my knife roll from where I'd left it on the counter and began unpacking my tools. Each blade caught the light as I arranged them in their familiar order, and I felt the satisfaction of a craftsperson returning to her craft. But as I reached for my favorite paring knife, I noticed something that made me pause. There, tucked between the knife slots, was a business card I didn't remember putting there. I pulled it out and read the elegant script. Elena Rodriguez, restaurant consultant, specializing in family business transitions and conflict resolution. I turned the card over and found a handwritten note. Linda, heard about your situation through industry contacts. If you ever need an outside perspective on family business dynamics, I'd be happy to help. Sometimes the most successful restaurants are the ones that learn to separate family from business. Elena. I stared at the card, wondering how it had gotten into my knife roll and what Elena Rodriguez knew about my situation that I didn't. The timing was too perfect to be coincidental, and the message too specific to be generic networking. Someone had been watching, waiting, planning. But who?
And why?
As I slipped the card into my pocket, I realized that while I'd won this battle with my family, the war for control of my own destiny was far from over. There were forces at play that I didn't understand yet, connections and influences that extended beyond the walls of Max's kitchen. But for now, I had a restaurant to run and a contract to save. The mysteries could wait. I tied my apron around my waist, picked up my knife, and got back to work. After all, I was Linda Max, managing partner of Max's Kitchen, and I had a reputation to rebuild. The knife moved through the vegetables with practiced precision, each cut clean and purposeful, just like the cuts I'd made in my old life to carve out something new, something that was finally, truly mine.